Hey, what's up guys? Rhino Rates Music here, and we're back for another video, and of course we are doing the final installment, or at least on this channel, of the year-end list, and we are going to be doing the albums. That's right, I'm going to be ranking my top 50 favourite albums of 2022. Now, I said that I was going to do the worst albums list next, but I've decided that because that's not one of my favourite videos to make, and because of the amount of pain that it'll put you guys through a full-length YouTube video, I've decided that I'm just going to do that on my TikTok page, which most of you guys should be aware of. If you're not, the link is in my description. So in this video, we'll be focusing on the top 50 best albums that came out this year, which has been a pretty colourful, pretty diverse year for music in my opinion. Yes, there have been some bad music, some bad songs that we already covered, and some bad music trends, but overall, I think there are a lot of great albums this year, and a lot of variety. Especially within the pop scene and the punk scene, a lot of great albums within those genres, and the rock scene, which we're going to go through all in this video. Anyway, without further waste of your time, let's get onto the list. So starting off at the number 50 spot, we have Perfume Genius with Ugly Season. Not one of his best and most conceptual albums to date, but definitely one of his more concise and beautiful, despite what the title suggests. At the number 49 spot, it is The Weeknd with his synth pop and city pop inspired Dawn FM. At the number 48, it is The Smile with A Light for Attracting Attention. If you're into Radiohead, you should be very into this as well. At the number 47 spot, it is Foxtails with the Midwest and Screamo inspired Fawn. At the number 46 spot, it is Florence and the Machine coming with their very grand and quite conceptual and also cohesive Dance Fever. At the number 45 spot, it is Polyphia with their amazing, mostly instrumental album, Remember That You Will Die, which also has some of their biggest guests to date, which all go over great in my opinion, or most of them. At the number 44 spot, we have probably the best grindcore album to come out this year, and that is Hiss by Singaporean grindcore outfit Wormrot. At number 43, it is hardcore punk band Off with Free LSD. The band is officially back, and they've came through with a pretty great album. At the number 42, it is Soccer Mummy coming through with probably one of her best albums to date, and collaboration with 106 Point Never with Sometimes Forever. Man, who thought that an indie pop and rock record with 106 Point Never production would go over this well? And Soccer Mummy's songwriting is still on point. At the number 41 spot, it is Westside Gunn with the final installment to his legendary Hitler Wears Hermes series with 10. And at the number 40 spot, it is The Garden with Horse Poo on Route 66. One of the most colourful and quirky punk albums you'll ever hear this year. At the number 39 spot is Kylie Rae Jepsen with The Loneliest Time, and at the number 38 spot, Nas and Hit Boy still continuing to kill it on King's Disease 3. At the number 37 spot is Jer with Bothered Unbothered. Scar is officially coming back, baby, and I'm all in for it. At the number 36 spot, it is Sampa the Great with her amazing hip-hop and Afrobeats inspired As Above, So Below. At the number 35 spot, it is Shy Girl with her debut album Nymph, and at the number 34 spot, we have FKA Twigs with her Capri Songs mixtape. At the number 33 spot, it is Bladee with Spiderr. Bladee coming through with one of his most fun, quirky, and also adventurous and best albums to date in my opinion, even coming from someone who's not the hugest drainer. At the number 32 spot, it is Freddie Gibbs with Soul Sold Separately, arguably his best solo album, and shows that Freddie Gibbs still has the ability to direct by himself when it comes to a solo album. At the number 31 spot, it is Eyez with Spell 31. They pretty much perfected minimalism on this album. And at the number 30 spot, it is Richard Dawson with The Ruby Chord. And no, I did not do that on purpose, ranking Spell 31 at 31. At the number 29 spot, it is DOMi and JD Beck with their amazing instrumental jazz and pop and R&B fusions, Not Tight. At number 28 spot, it is Conway the Machine coming through with one of the best Griselda albums to date with God Don't Make Mistakes. At the number 27 spot, it is King Gizzard with their Ice, Death, Planets, Mushrooms, and Lava album. And the last album in the first half of this list, at the number 26 spot, it is Beach House with Once Twice Melody. Moving on to the number 25 spot, we have Billy Woods with Aethiopes, who is still continuing to kill it on the lyrical end, the reference perspective, the production is versatile. If you love underground abstract hip-hop, this is a must listen. And at the number 24 spot, it is Pusha T with It's Almost Dry. At the number 23 spot, it is SZA with her sophomore album, SOS. The long wait was definitely worth it, not just because this album is very long, but almost every track on this album is great, and I'm so glad SZA came through. At the number 22 spot, we have one of the best rock albums this year. It is Jack White with Fear of the Dawn. And Jack White, I love how he's not only continuing to explore versatility on this album with some amazing performances, some great production, and pretty cohesive elements, but also coming through with a theme on this album and doing it quite well. And while his second album this year, Entering Heaven Alive, was nowhere near as good, at least he got 1 out of 2 with this album. Definitely check it out if you haven't. At the number 21 spot, it is Danger Mouse and Black Thought with Cheat Codes, one of the best hip-hop albums this year. And at the number 20 spot, it is Kendrick Lamar with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, both 2 of the best hip-hop albums this year. I just love how Danger Mouse showing that even after many years of making a hip-hop album, he still has got it when it comes to production. Black Thought at the age of 50 still rapping his ass off, and some amazing legendary features too. And Kendrick Lamar coming out with one of his most thoughtful and sentimental albums on Mr. Morale. Basically the first half acting as a therapy session, and the second half finding his place and basically humanizing himself and a lot of other artists, and making us realize that, yeah, well, not that I always knew that, but other people realize that, yeah, Kendrick is just a human being and an artist. At the number 19 spot, it is easily one of the most colourful and varied pop and rock albums. It is Alvvays with Blue Rev. Alvvays have definitely perfected, or at least almost perfected, something here. Combining elements of indie pop and singer-songwriter that we've been hearing so many artists do lately, but giving it a more dreamy feel and adding more shoegaze to it, and with tracks like Very Online Guy, After the Earthquake, Tile by Tile, and Pomeranian Spinster really encapsulates that and shows the versatility of this album. It's amazing. At the number 18 spot, it is Petrol Girls with Baby. Very feminist, yet still hard-hitting driven punk album. Lyrics here tackling on topics such as police brutality, gender stereotypes and sexism, as well as transphobia, abortion. Lots of topics covered on this album, and Petrol Girls do it well. At the number 17 spot, it is Quedeca coming through with I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. Man, this blend of emo, folktronica, art pop, and Midwest, as well as some rock music and hip-hop is just, it's out of this world. And the fact that we went from Quedeca's last album to this album, is this really the same guy making this album? I don't know, but still, it's amazing and has got a very great and creative concept as well. At the number 16 spot, we have Chat Pile with God's Country. Basically a great blend between post-hardcore, noise rock, and sludge metal. If that's your cup of tea, this album will be for you. And not just the instrumentals and the production and the performances of this album are hard-hitting, but the vocalist is definitely a selling point for this band. One of the most cathartic and out-there vocalists I've heard in any band this year. And the lyrical topics covered on this album is very important. Going from songs like tackling economics to homelessness in the United States and around the world, to the closing track, which is just literally a mental breakdown, both lyrically and instrumentally. So yeah, this album is not for the faint of heart, let me warn you, but it is amazing. Right, now in the top 15, at the number 15 spot, it is Rosalia with Molto Mummy. Man, if this is not on your top 50 list, what are you doing? Not only does Rosalia come through with one of her most fun and versatile albums to date, but also one of her most cohesive albums. And one of her most lyrically thoughtful. Songs like Janice, where she is talking about personal issues as well as with her family, and songs where she's talking about this struggle she's had living in LA, as well as the culture that surrounds it. But overall, even with those aside, this album just consists of amazing production, amazing vocal performances of Rosalia, but what less could we have expected? At the number 14 spot, it is Death's Dynamic Shroud with Darklife. No matter how many times I listen to this album, I still can't describe what it is. It's a little bit of experimental, it is post-industrial, post-hardcore, dance, vaporwave, art pop. It's so much all into one, but it is absolutely amazing and you will have the time of your life listening to this album. At the number 13 spot, it is Beyoncé with Renaissance. Yes, I know this is one of the most talked about albums this year and one of the most popular, but it's still amazing and in a lot of ways on point with Lemonade. Not only do the influences of dance music, house music, R&B, funk, soul, and hip-hop all come through on this album so tastefully and so amazingly, but it's like Beyoncé is paying tribute to all these genres and doing it so well in the process. Beyoncé's vocal performances still kicking it, still killing it, and the song topics as well, the lyrical topics are also worth taking note of. The sampling on this album is done really, really, really well, and despite there being 16 tracks, there are very little misses. There's so much to take in with this album. There's something in it for everyone, something in it for every type of fan, and yeah, while it may not be as conceptual or as thematic or as thought out as Lemonade, it's definitely more versatile and definitely more cohesive than Lemonade, in my opinion. At the number 12 spot, we have Wise Blood with And in the Darkness, Hearts Aglow. Maybe a tiny step down from Titanic Rising, but that's still not saying anything bad about this album, because Titanic Rising is my top 3 favorite albums of 2019, but this album is still a great follow-up. Wise Blood is just continuing to kill it vocally and shows why she's one of the best in the game right now. The influences of chamber pop, art folk are still coming through amazingly on this album. There's a concept as well. The production is also very sweet on this album. Yeah, just an amazing album, and if you're into chamber pop or folk, then this is a must listen. Or if you were just simply a fan of Titanic Rising like I was. At the number 11 spot, it is one of the most colourful and interesting pop albums this year. We have Jockstrap with I Love You, Jennifer B. The production on this album does come across as quirky at some points, but in one of the best ways possible. But there are also some elements of the production that's also beautiful, layered so well. And despite all that, there's quite a bit of experimentation going on, yet very few moments on this album that are actually difficult to listen to. It's actually a very pleasant to the ears, but definitely will stick with you, especially songs like Greatest Hits, Concrete Over Water, and What's It All About, which is one of the more stripped back songs on this album, but shows the amount of influences that they're really bringing into on this album. From elements of alternative pop to baroque pop, orchestral, singer-songwriter. It's just coming through so well on this album and in such a tasteful and colourful way. This is definitely one of the best experiences you'll ever have with a pop album this year. And Georgia Ellery is just already proving herself to be a one-of-a-kind vocalist. And amazing that Georgia Ellery is part of 2 of the best and most promising projects in the underground right now, both this and Black Country New Road, killing it in both of those. Righto, we have reached the top 10 spot, so I'm going to explain these albums a bit more thorough like I've already been doing. So at the number 10 spot, it is Black Midi with Hellfire. In a lot of ways, this album is definitely better than Cavalcade, although it may not be as linear as Cavalcade. It definitely has some of the band's best playing, best production, and best lyrics of their entire career. On this album, you are getting elements of math rock, art rock, avant-garde, jazz fusion that's done so well on songs like Sugar Zoo. And even on the closing track, 27 Questions, it's basically like 2 songs in one. Just really showing that there's very little to no limits with this band, and it's so amazing that I get to be alive during this time where Black Midi is coming out with some of the most creative and most interesting, but also intriguing and exuberant rock music to date. Moving on to number 9, it is one of the best pop albums of this year, one of the funnest. It is Kilo Kish with American Girl. There are some songs on here where Kilo Kish is just trying to invent a new genre here almost. There are other tracks where she's bringing in 2 styles here and yet formulating them so well and flowing into them so well, such as on the Gene Dawson track. But even on the tracks here that are less experimental and just more paying homage to elements of synth pop as well as art pop and electronic music, she is doing them very well, adding her unique spin to it. Her vocals are some of the most playful that I've ever heard in a pop album this year. They vary quite a bit on all these tracks. The songwriting may not be the best, but Kilo Kish, I do think, as much as I love this album, I do think Kilo Kish could top this album in the future. But still, her sound, what she's doing on this album, is something to behold, in my opinion, and this is definitely another album, just like Molto Mummy, that you will have loads of fun listening to. At the number 8 spot, it is Viagra Boys with Cave World. As much as I really liked Welfare Jazz last year, or yeah, in 2021, I really did think that Viagra Boys would either top this, blow that album out of the water, or they would just completely fall off. I'm so glad that the former happened with this album. Not only is the playing on this album absolutely on par, the fusions of dance punk, electronic, rave, as well as little bits of hip-hop as well, and little bits of noise rock coming through amazingly on this album. Not only is Sebastian proving to be one of the most exuberant and funnest frontmen in any rock band this year, But there's also a concept to this album, and a great one at that. Basically taking everybody, the right-wingers who have fallen a victim to this capitalist-driven society, aspects of it that are being portrayed in the media, as well as on social media, and basically connotating these characters, these people who fall into these, people such as science deniers and anti-vaxxers, and people who just always do everything they do on social media, with a lack of resources, a lack of time outside of that environment, and just stuck without them realizing it. Taking this concept and turning it into this whole narrative about those people being under-evolved, or blaming it on something that occurred during the prehistoric times when we were cavemen. It's an amazing concept, and I don't know how, but the band pulled it off really well here. At the number 7 spot, it is easily one of the best punk albums of this year. I'm talking about Soul Glow with Diaspora Problems. Not only is this album some of the ferocious and most hardest hitting hardcore punk I have ever heard, but the way it's combining elements of noise rock, sludge, and hip hop as well. The vocalist is both an amazing animated performer, and he can also rap as well that he's done on this album. Not only are these genres being combined together so well, but the songwriting of this album is also terrific. Tackling topics such as racism, capitalism, consumerism, as well as personal family dynamics and drama, not just what's suggested in the title. It's just, man, this album, I love it so much, and I loved it when it first came out, and somehow I love it even more to this day than when I heard it when it first came out. And this is an album that is a must listen for anyone who is a fan of hardcore punk, or even anyone who is a fan of like more experimental or hard-hitting hip-hop. I think those people will also get a lot out of this album too. Okay, coming in at number 6 spot, it is easily one of the best hip-hop albums this year. It is Denzel Curry with Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. Not only is Denzel's rapping still very thoughtful on this album, and also on point, the bars continue on this album, but I think it's also one of his most stripped-back albums, but not in the sense sonically, because there is some amazing production in this album. From elements of jazz rap, to psychedelic hip-hop, to trap music, and even some acid rock as well. And Denzel Curry is just flowing over these instrumentals, these amazing instrumentals, like he's putting no effort in. And I also heavily appreciate how thoughtful this album is lyrically. Denzel taking a step back from the harsh realities of life that he was once living in before during some of his other albums, and bettering himself as a person, becoming more mature, walking through all the hardships that's going on in society, while also dealing with his own, and finding a sense of comfort and a sense of peace within himself, despite all the drama that's going on in this world. Dramas such as racism, COVID-19, Black Lives Matter, everything. Denzel touches upon a lot of different topics here. And the features are also great on this album too. And one of the best posse cuts of the year with Ain't No Way. A lot of people will still say that, well, yes, Taboo is more aggressive and probably more likable to more hardcore hip-hop listeners on first listen. I personally think that Melt My Eyes, See Your Future is Denzel Curry's best album because of just how rich it is, how diverse it is, yet how dynamic it also is, and how thoughtful it is, and also versatile. Okay, we are now entering the top 5 of this list, the top 5. So at the number 5 spot, Ashenspire with Hostile Architecture. Definitely, in my opinion, the best metal album this year, if you even call it that. Because while there are definitely some elements, a lot of elements of black metal in this album, you've also got elements of jazz, folk, progressive rock, a little bit of gospel even. But from the instrumental passages to the transitions, the multi-phase moments, the way the strings and the horns and instrumental passages like that are laced throughout these heavier hitting guitars and drums, it's done so well. The vocalist incorporating his Scottish accent roots, which I love. And the lyrics on this album touching upon topics such as economic issues, as well as environmental and architectural issues, homelessness, and then blaming it on a lot of economic and architectural shortcuts that have been made by the government, as well as touching on topics such as misogyny, as well as centrist and capitalism and fascism, and how it's slowly eating us up, and that we need to be in the right position before it does end up doing that. But man, what a fun, unique, creative, and amazing album from this Scottish band that I'm so glad I discovered. Moving on to the number 4 spot, we have Natalia Lafourcade with De Todas las Flores. Not only is Natalia's songwriting still on fucking point on this album, the poetry is amazing, her vocals, still, just like Rosalia, one of the best Latin vocalists in the game. The production here is not as minimal as some of her previous works, nor is it as clean as her previous album. It sounds more raw, but in a way where it sounds more organic, more fresh, because she's got a band playing and they just sound absolutely amazing. Combine that with Natalia's already amazing vocals, performances, lyrics, as well as the mixing of this album, and you've got yourself easily one of the best folk albums of the year. Speaking of folk music, at the number 3 spot it is Big Thief with Dragon New War Mountain, I Believe in You. Big Thief here showed not only how you make a double album without it dragging on with almost every single song being amazing, but also showing how you make a folk album that still sounds lavish, that still sounds fresh, combining elements of old style folk music and bringing in some new elements too. Because this album also takes not only aspects of indie folk, but also jangle pop, art pop, alternative country, bluegrass, rock music. It's doing so much here. And Adrienne Lenker is proving herself to be one of the best songwriters that folk music has to offer right now. And not to mention the vocals as well, the band's performances are great on this album. And yeah, despite being 20 tracks long, I can't think of a single track that I would skip on here. There's just so much to dive into with this album, and I think any indie folk or bluegrass fan will have so much fun with this album, or singer-songwriter fan. Now, coming in at the number 2 spot, we have made it to the top 2 spot, so at the number 2 spot, it is Black Country New Road with Ants From Up There. Aha, some of you's probably expected me to put this at the number 1 spot, but it was darn close between these two albums. So Ants From Up There is not only a triumphant moment for art rock, but it is also a triumphant moment for this style of underground rock music. This album has been one of the most talked about albums all year. It's made on so many publications lists. It's been praised by so many music fans, music nerds, including myself. And it also shows how far you can go with combining elements of art pop with chamber pop, art rock, and jazz. And not to mention, Isaac Woods, as sad as it is very sad that he left the band just before this album came out, but Isaac Wood is just one of a kind vocalist. I get he's not going to be for everyone, but me personally, the way he's inflicting such raw emotions on this album, mixed with his very unique and exuberant songwriting that you're not going to get from anyone else aside from Isaac, it shows that this is clearly Isaac Wood writing this. It's just the cherry on top with this album. On top of the instrumentals, there is not a single band member on this album who is underperforming. There's not a single instrumental moment or band member who doesn't have at least one special moment. From Lewis Evans on saxophone, Georgia Ellery on the strings, Tyler Hyde's bass playing, as well as Charlie on guitar. There's just so many aspects of this album to dig into, and it's an album that I will continue to enjoy for many, many, many years to come as I continue to grow old, just like I have throughout this year. And I thought for a while that no album was going to top this. This was going to be the number 1 album. But no, for me, my number 1 album of this year, the number 1 album of 2022 for me, has to go to JID with The Forever Story. Yes, I am not kidding you. This album to me is just perfect. Not only is JID proving himself, or has proved himself to be one of the most skillful and amazing rappers in the scene right now, his flow, his bars, his incorporation of tongue twisters, the way he does all of this without skipping a beat, without pausing, without taking a breath, it's like he's doing it putting no effort in. The instrumentals on this album are amazing, some of JID's best production to date that he's rapping on, and I'm even surprised that he's able to rap over some of these beats so fucking well. All of this already makes for an amazing hip-hop album, and the lyrics too make for an amazing hip-hop album, but it's really the concept of this album that also does it for me. This album is definitely one of the most personal hip-hop albums you will ever hear this year. Not just for the standards of JID, but hip-hop overall. The way he is talking about his upbringing, to his childhood, to what made him become a rapper, to why he didn't decide to keep going and playing football, and why he transitioned to rapping. Lyrics discussing his family issues he had, but also love for his family, love for his friends, love for the game, but also a lot of issues that have gone on in the game, as well as his own personal life, and the spiritual themes connected to this album as well. And really the way the theme is all summed up with the fact that JID is just a person like all of us. He's a human being who had his own upbringing, he had his own childhood, he has his own perspective on these things, and that conscious rappers like JID should not be put to this higher standard like they're expected to change the world or anything like that. Not that I expect JID to at all, but I just expect him to make great music, and he absolutely killed that on this album. I could go on and on and on about this album, from the concept to amazing bars all across this album, to the production and everything on why this is not only my favorite hip-hop album of the year, but my favorite album of the year. So guys, that's pretty much going to wrap up the list. So if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know a like, comment, subscribe, tell me what your favorite album this year was, tell me what albums you love from this list, and how would your list go and what did you think of this list. But until then guys, I will see you in the next video or see you back on TikTok. Take care and have a Merry Christmas. Bye bye.